Is JavaScript a hard language to learn? JavaScript is like the new cool kid in the block, and everyone cannot stop talking about JavaScript. They kind of overdo it, like they kind of make it seem like this is the best language ever, and the whole argument of you need to learn only one language and you are good to go for the back end, front end, and all this bullshit. It's just like another language, and for a long time, like I have been working professionally for about 4 years now, and I've been coding even longer than that, and I have never considered myself, a person who gets to attach to a language. I was always a language agnostic person, so I always was willing to pick up new language, work with new language, and I have actually worked with major languages out there. Like I have worked with PHP Laravel, one of my favorite frameworks out there. I have worked with Python Django. I have worked with Ruby on Rails, and right now I'm working with Node and Loopback, JS, and React. So JavaScript is something that is very easy to pick up but hard to master. It is pretty easy to learn JavaScript. JavaScript is not that hard, but it is hard to master because I thought I knew JavaScript. Because after working for all these years, man, as a full stack engineer, I have always worked with JavaScript or some form of JavaScript, be it jQuery, Knockout.js, Backbone.js, Express.js, anything like that. But there is another level of JavaScript, another in-depth level of JavaScript that you need to get an understanding of if you really want to become good at JavaScript. So yeah, JavaScript is in a way is hard to learn. People, tend to rush when they learn JavaScript. They want to learn JavaScript and they, obviously immediately want to, work with React. And that is a very bad way to do it because I think you have to be passionate with JavaScript because, you know, the thing about JavaScript is that there are so many resources out there, but or most of them are 90% of the resources out there are if you're a kind of person who understands or learns better through video, then most of them are pretty basic level. They teach you the what a variable is, conditions, loops, and data structures, and all those things. But if you're learning JavaScript through a you know coding bootcamp or online course or anything like that, then your learning should not stop there. You should, in fact, go further with your learning because it is easy to like get a basic understanding of JavaScript and be able to work with it. But so okay, for example, React in itself is like a language, like because the framework has so much things that it does in its own way that you have to like allocate like more time for React also. But learning JavaScript's basic and then immediately jumping into React is a very bad thing because once you understand JavaScript's basic, you should be patient and go in depth because JavaScript really rewards when you have a fundamental, when you have a better understanding of the fundamentals. So suppose you have gone through a course and then you know all the bar, let, const, and all these yeah, conditions and how a loop works and everything. But I'd suggest after going through a video course, you should read a book. Especially, I think for a beginner, it is really helpful if you actually read a book. And there is a good book called Eloquent JavaScript, so you can go through that because books tend to be more in depth and like break down the abstraction level and they go in depth and they tell you that how this thing works. And this is very important that you know how things work under the hood because if you rush things, if you just learn the basics and then immediately jump to a framework, then you will struggle with it more, even more, and you will waste your time more, struggling with all these things. So once you learn JavaScript, learn the concept in an in-depth level, and then I'd say like learn yes all the modern JavaScripts because JavaScript keeps evolving and there are different versions of JavaScript. So you need to get up to speed with the modern JavaScript like ES6 and everything. So learn about higher order functions, what a map function is, what a filter function is, and not just like writing a map function and getting an array back, but really understanding how a map function works or a filter function works. Because so there here's a quick little tip to really get a better understanding of how all this higher order function works. Once you go through like a higher order function and you think you know the higher order function like map and filter and everything, then immediately think of vanilla JavaScript and think of how you would implement the same method but using vanilla JavaScript or any other language. And once you start doing that kind of stuff, you get a better understanding of how things work under the hood. And that will help you tremendously, in the long run. So you need to get a proper understanding of the language. And to do that, I say like after finishing the course, if you are going through a course or bootcamp, and then after finishing a book, after like learning about all these modern JavaScript concepts, I'd say go to the documentation, like read as much as you can about all these methods and how these methods are implemented under the hood and what design patterns they're following and everything. And then go to the React documentation and read the React documentation. Whoever is trying to sell you React codes, just ripping you off, you can learn React on your own if your fundamentals are strong, and if you really know JavaScript, then you can learn React by just going to the documentation and trying things out on your own. So rushing through things is not a very good idea. It is very easy to ignore JavaScript's advanced concepts and just rush through things and just directly jump onto React. But patience is the key here. You have to go in depth, and that applies to any language, not just JavaScript. So yeah, JavaScript is easy to easy to learn, hard to master. All right, that was my 2 cents. See ya.